Hey friends, hope you're doing well. Today I'd like to show you how you can get SQL Server database tables into Python. So let's get started. At first, what you need, of course, is some kind of database. In my case, I'm using the free version of SQL Server from Microsoft, and I'm using also the SQL Server Management Studio here in order to connect to the underlying database. So for doing that, I need to click on Connect in here and select my database engine, click on it, and then there's my server name, there's my authentication. In my case, I'm using Windows, but of course you could also use user and password if you define that, and then I can click on Connect. And then we can go to the databases here, and in my case, I see I have a Power BI database in here. So if I right click and say I would like to see a query, so in this case, I could create my own custom query, or I could simply do it a little bit different. So go in here, go to the tables, that's what I meant, and right click on here. And now I could either write my own script by clicking new query here, or I right click on the table here and say I would like to select the top 1000 rows. It's simply a select star on the table itself. So if I do that, and then I can see this is the data I have in here, okay? So that's my data, and this is just data about, in this case, some orders from customers. So the question now becomes, how can I get this data into Python? Well, that is a good question, and for that, we're gonna leverage the SQL Alchemy package in Python. So let's do that. Let's go into my Python editor. In this case, I'm using Jupyter Notebook, but you feel free to use any kind of code editor you want. It's up to you. So in order to connect, what do we need? Well, at first we need some kind of libraries. I already said we need SQL Alchemy, so I say import SQL Alchemy. Alchemy, I need to spell it correctly, okay? And just in case you have not installed it, you need to install it first. You can simply go with pip or with conda, whatever kind of package manager you use. So after importing SQL Alchemy, I also need to import a few other things. So I say from SQL Alchemy, I want to import the create engine, that's actually what we need. And if you work with the newest version of SQL Alchemy, so it's a version 2 dot something, I'm not sure right now, but it's above 2.0. In that case, you will run into an error if you try to connect with pandas afterwards. Because the pandas, at least the actual version, the current version in pandas, does not support or is actually using some kind of specific package in SQL Alchemy which is not available in the newest version anymore. So you will run into an error. And in order to avoid this error, there's actually a solution for that. We simply import the text, in this case object, from SQL Alchemy as well. We need this later on. Okay, so we got this. And then, because we want to use pandas, so we'll import pandas as PD, and not PCPD. And then I want to also import PyODBC. Well, we also need this ODBC. Okay, so these are the libraries we need. So let me just execute this. Okay, so far so good. We don't get any errors. So all the modules are available for us. And then I need to specify a few things. The first thing, so from the variables, is my server name. So server name. Then next to my server name, I also need, in this case, my database name. So database, need to spell it correctly. Database, database, like that, equals. And the last thing I need is, in this case, the driver. So driver. The reason for this is because we have several, SQL servers, right? It could be a MySQL server, it could be a Microsoft SQL server, it could be a Postgres SQL database. So there are various options for databases, and that's why we need to specify the specific driver we need. So the driver itself is actually SQL server, so I could specify here SQL and then no spaces, that's plus symbol here, and then server. Okay, that's the driver. The database I have is, if I take a closer look in here, the database in my case is called a Power BI database. So that means that if I go here, I can specify here, in this case, in quotes, so Power BI database. Okay, data, spell it again, base. Okay, here we go, database. And the last thing is the server name. So the server name in my case is here Panda and then SQL Server Express, but I can't copy it directly from here, so I will simply disconnect and connect one more time, database engine, and then I simply copy it from here. That's my server name, okay? So go in here, Control C to copy it, and then I go to my here, my Jupyter Notebook again, and then I specify here simply Panda SQL Express. So, of course, you need to use your own, well, server name, database. Driver is the same, but those two things you need to change on your own. Okay, so let's execute this. Okay, the variables are defined, and now we actually create the query. So the query is equal to, and we keep it quite simple, so we also use a select star. But of course, you could use any kind of complex SQL query you have or you want to execute. In this case, we simply say select, in this case, and then star from, and then DBO, that is the schema, and then dot. In my case, it's called Bestellungen Tabelle. It's just a German name for orders table, okay? German name for orders table, so like that. And where do you get this DBO Bestellungstabelle? In this case, or in my case, if I connect, you'll see that if I go to my databases and Power BI database, the default schema is the DBO, which is always the case for Microsoft SQL Server, and you can see it's called DBO dot and then this name. So that's it for that. Okay, here we go. That is the query. And now we need to specify the engine. So engine is equal to create engine. And then we need to specify the exact connection string, which is called MS-SQL in my case, which stands for Microsoft SQL Server. And then we need PyODBC, so plus PyODBC. And then we use double colon and then 2 slashes. And then we specify here in this case, I'm using placeholders. You could also use an F string, by the way, if you want to put the server name, database, and driver directly in here, or use the older format option. So in this case, I'm using the format option. So I go in here and say slash. So first placeholder, the curly braces here, these are actually for the server name. The next placeholder is for the database. So again, placeholder in here. And then we put in a question mark here. So, and then we specify the driver. Driver is equal to, and again, a placeholder for the driver. And then just put format, and then we specify here, okay, for the first placeholder, we use the server name. The second one is our database. I need to spell it correctly. Database, okay, here we go. And the last one is the driver. Okay, like that. And now let's execute this. Okay, so far so good. And now finally, of course, we can read the table itself. So I can say table in this case is equal to, and now pd.read SQL query, so SQL query. And now, of course, we could also write our query string in here. In this case, we already defined it, so I can simply use the query in here, like that. And that's what I did, basically. And I ran into this error, which I mentioned at the beginning. And this is why we need to wrap this. So we can't use query directly. We need to put it inside text. So we need to write text query, like that. Okay? Only then this is working with the newest version of SQL Server Alchemy. Or, sorry, SQL Alchemy. So here we go. We got this, and then of course we also need to specify the connection. So con is equal to, and then we use engine.connect. And because it's a function or a method, that's why we use 2 curly braces here, or 2 parentheses here. Okay, and that's it actually. Now I can simply call table.head just to show the first 5 entries from the pandas. And if I execute this, you'll see that now this is the table I get. So I got here my Umsatz. Umsatz is just revenue in German. And you can see here 60, 486, 500. And if we take a closer look to the data we have here, this is 60, 486, and then 500. So we get exactly the data from the SQL Server here inside our Jupyter Notebook. So inside, in this case, a pandas a data frame. And now, of course, we can do all our transformations. We can, for instance, calculate the earnings, which can be done by actually subtracting the cost from the revenue here, and so on, right? And after that, of course, we can export this either to SQL Server again, or we could export it to an Excel file, for instance, a CSV file, or something else, right? And that's basically it. So you see that considering the code, it's not really much, but of course you need to know what you do in order to extract the data. And yeah, that's why we went through it. Hopefully the explanations why we did what we did were helpful. And in case you like it, then please smash the like button, and also please consider subscribing to the channel. It means a lot to me, and then I, of course, hopefully can create more valuable videos for you in the future as well. So thanks a lot, take care, and see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.